My name is Margaret Rougeux, and I did my book on A Year Down Yonder by Richard Peck. Mary Alice is introduced to us as a 15-year-old girl whom is very poor in the year of 1937 during the Great Depression. She has reached the train station in Chicago with her mother because she is being sent to her grandmother's to live, which she sees as a major hick town. Mary Alice cannot live without her family because they must build their finances back up due to the Depression. Mary Alice begins with a few clothes, her cat Bootsy, and her radio. As she reaches the town, she remembers that Grandma is not the nicest, most welcoming person. Right off the train, Mary Alice is sent to school where she first discovers Mildred Burdick, the class bully, and soon learns about the Burdick family. Mildred picks on Mary Alice, calling her a rich Chicago girl, and after school follows her home, demanding $1. To our surprise, Grandma welcomes Mildred politely, but only as an act. As Mildred eats, Grandma sneaks outside and unties her horse and ties Mildred's shoes to them so she is left walking home barefoot. In the next chapter, we learn about Halloween as a huge event in Grandma's town, and is also Grandma's favorite holiday because of all the pranks. In the meantime, Bootsy the cat is living in the clubhouse behind the house because Grandma does not allow cats in the house. During the Halloween season, Mary Alice goes to check on Bootsy and comes to find a tin can tied around his tail. Grandma and Mary Alice come up with a prank on their own by tying wiring to railroad spikes and some glue to drench the pranksters in. The prank is a success and leaves one of the boys covered in glue. Grandma and Mary Alice go on adventures together, such as gathering pecans for pie and stealing pumpkins for pumpkin pie. Grandma makes a load of pumpkin pies for the Halloween party at school, and they are a huge hit. Grandma serves the pie herself until she notices the principal's son, Augie Fluke, with a bald head and bandaged nose, and knows that he was the prankster she covered in glue. The prankster has to cut and serve his own piece of pie. Chapter 3 gives us a small history about Armistice Day, which celebrated the end of World War I. The American Legion in Grandma's town hosts a sharpshooting contest at Abernathy Farm. Sharpshooting is a competition of marksmen or markswomen who are very talented at shooting. Grandma happens to be known for her shot, but she doesn't compete because she chooses to make Rougeux stew. Rougeux stew is made from scraps or vegetables, or any other trimmings that happen to be left over or laying around. During the shoot, Augie Fluke comes back into the story, and he attempts to shoot, but suddenly changes his aim when a rabbit comes in view. He attempts to shoot the rabbit, but shoots someone's car instead. Grandma comes back into the story with her sneaky tactics and introduces herself as the cashier for the Rougeux soup, which is $1 a cup. Grandma sneakily charges those who can afford more for the stew. Her reasons for doing so are to support Mr. Abernathy's son, who is in a wheelchair, blinded, and mentally ill from toxic nerve gas when he served in the war. Grandma pulls through for Mr. Abernathy's son by providing him with more money to help him survive financially. It is Christmas time in the small hick town, and Mary Alice continues to make more friends with a few girls, including Ina Ray Gage. Mary Alice continues to wither away her rich girl reputation. At school, planning starts for the annual Christmas program, and Mary Alice is chosen to be the Virgin Mary in the nativity scene, and her enemy, Carlene Lovejoy, will play the leader of the Heavenly Angels. Back at home, Grandma continues to use her tactics to survive, this time trapping foxes. Grandma succeeds in trapping and shooting 4 foxes so she can sell their hide to the fur broker in town. Grandma isn't a fan of Christmas season, but she treats Mary Alice good by buying her new shoes, cutting down a tree, and a beautiful halo for the Christmas program that can outshine Carlene's halo. The night of the Christmas program arrives, and Mary Alice plays a great Mary with a real baby Jesus in the manger. Grandma examines the baby and notices that it is Mildred Burdick's baby, whom will be up for adoption. At the end of the chapter, there is one more surprise for Mary Alice, which is the surprise of her brother Joey. Mary Alice is beyond excited to see him and is happy that Grandma is so good to her. The next chapter is all about Grandma and her genius plot on Mrs. Weidenbaugh in the local chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, also known as DAR, D-A-R. Mrs. Weidenbaugh comes by the house and begs Grandma to bake cherry tarts for the annual gathering of the DAR. Grandma says the only way she will bake the tarts is if she can have the meeting at her tiny shack of a house. Mrs. Wadenbaugh is not a fan of doing this, but agrees. Grandma and Mary Alice get busy making the tarts for the meeting, and Grandma dresses up in her best attire. Grandma sneakily invites two of her friends, Mrs. Wilcox and Aunt May Griswold, to the meeting. These ladies are hillbillies and have no association with the DAR. When Mrs. Weidenbaugh and the other DAR ladies arrive, they are horrified with these ladies, but the meeting proceeds. Mrs. Weidenbaugh starts bragging about her family tree, but is interrupted when Aunt May tells her that she was adopted and belongs to the Burdick family. Mrs. Wilcox, the other woman, turns out to be Mrs. Weidenbaugh's long-lost biological sister. Mrs. Weidenbaugh is so startled by this that she races out of the house, ends the meeting, and the rest of the women enjoy the cherry tarts and have enjoyable laughs over what had just happened. The next chapter is full of mystery and surprising romantic scenes. Mary Alice continues her liking towards Royce, the boy in her class, and believes he would be a good help in math tutoring for her finals coming up. Her real reason for asking him to come over is obviously because she likes him, and he agrees to come to the house. Meanwhile, a mystery man comes into town and shows himself as an artist named Arnold Green, who desperately needs a place to stay. Grandma agrees to house him, but charges him rent. Arnold has no problem with that and stays in the attic. When Royce comes over to the house with Mary Alice, their chemistry is interrupted by a scream in the attic, and sure enough, Maxine Patch comes down the stairs naked with a snake that fell from the ceiling wrapped around her neck. Arnold explains that he was only painting a new portrait of her. Mary Alice thinks that her crazy household would ruin all chances with Royce. Grandma helps Arnold out by introducing him to the sweet Mrs. Butler, and it all ends with them. Another season comes, and everything seems to be coming together. Mary Alice receives a letter from her parents explaining she can come home soon to Chicago. Graduation is near, and Miss Butler is engaged to Arnold Green. One day, a wicked tornado hits the town, and Mary Alice and Grandma hide in the house and are safe and sound, but worry about many others in town. They go out seeking old man Nyquist, whom is trapped, and Grandma gets him out while he insults Grandma. School graduation comes, and Royce is named valedictorian with a scholarship to university. He promises Mary Alice he will write to her, and Mary Alice becomes very emotional, having to leave this town and Grandma. Grandma, for once, becomes emotional and tells Mary Alice her door will always be open. Now, at the end of the book, it gets a little interesting. It has a unique ending, and it has this ever after ending that is written a half a dozen years later. It is told by Mary Alice, and she lets us know that her brother Joey is serving in World War II while her parents moved to Seattle for work. Mary Alice tells us that she comes back to Grandma's town and marries Royce McNabb. Happily ever after they all live.